Picture walking through a mist-covered forest, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and ancient moss clinging like memories to gnarled roots. The early morning light filters weakly through towering oaks, casting long shadows that shift and dance as if alive. You hear the faintest crunch of leaves underfoot, yet no one appears. Suddenly, from the stone-strewn clearing ahead, a ripple distorts the air. A figure carved from rock itself seems to breathe beneath the canopy. But before your eyes can truly grasp its shape, it vanishes, dissolving into the mist as silently as it came. This is not a trick of the light, nor a figment of imagination. This is the whisper of a forgotten world, where beings made of stone once walked among us. We call them the Stone People. They lived in the borderland between the known and the mysterious, guardians of secrets now lost to time. These beings once filled our stories, our nightmares, and our dreams, setting the boundary between man and myth. Yet today, they have all but vanished, impossible to prove, too strange to recall clearly. So what were they really? And why did they disappear? The Stone People are neither statues nor spirits in the conventional sense. This might be the strangest thing about these elusive beings. They were said to be alive in the flesh, and yet made of stone, seeming as immovable and silent as mountains one moment, then fluid and alive the next. Imagine a creature part mineral, part spirit, walking through the forests and hillsides of ancient Scotland or the rugged earth of Iceland. Shoulders broad and skin cracked like granite. To encounter one was to face the living memory of the earth itself, a slow-moving yet eternal witness to the rise and fall of human kingdoms. Far from the popular image of cold, unyielding rock, the Stone People were whispered to possess emotions and intentions, slow-burning like volcanic fires beneath a frozen crust. In the oldie world, tales collected by folklorists like Catharine Briggs in her seminal work on British fairies and spirits describe these beings as the living stones, entities born from the earth but filled with the breath of old magic. They appear in 16th century Scottish ballads as protectors of sacred groves and ancient burial mounds, yet also as unpredictable forces of nature, sometimes helpful, sometimes dangerously indifferent. One tale from the borders tells of a shepherd named Alistair, who lost his way in the mist and stumbled upon a gathering of stone people beneath a circle of monoliths. They stood silent, statuesque, until one stepped forward and offered guidance home. The shepherd swore he felt the warmth of cold stone radiate through his hand, a paradox that confounded his senses. To describe the Stone People as mere myth would be to ignore how deeply ingrained they were in the psyche of rural communities, symbols of endurance, mystery, and the thin line between life and inanimate being. But the stories have faded. Why? The Stone People vanished from collective memory as the world rushed into an age of steel rails and chimneys, where smooth glass and iron replaced ancient forests and rugged hills as the landscape of the living. As towns grew and nature was tamed, the silent watchers of stone became irrelevant. Their legends edged out like moss from a newly paved road. In literary collections by Grimm or the brothers Goncourt, you'll find hints of similar shape-shifting stone guardians, creatures frozen until humans declare their need or show respect. But these snippets are rare, scattered, as if the myths themselves wish to remain hidden. Perhaps these tales faded because modern minds struggled to understand a being that embodied contradictions, alive, yet lifeless, ancient yet intimately connected to human sorrow and joy. The Stone People were more than mere curiosities. They were reflections of a cultural concept deeply rooted in animism, where every rock, tree, and stream held spirit and purpose. In 12th century Wales, folk believed that certain standing stones marked the borders of enchanted realms, guarded by beings who tested the worthiness of travelers. These stones were the original environmental activists, quietly insisting that the land be respected and the old ways honored. To ignore the Stone People was to risk nature's wrath, not as vague disasters, but as targeted consequences for human disrespect. In this sense, they acted like medieval social workers, enforcing the rules of coexistence between mankind and the earth, reminding us that we are never truly separate from the world beneath our feet. But the Stone People were more than just envoys of nature's will. Their legends also reveal a psychological dimension, a mythology of human resilience and the power of memory. Among the Irish and Scottish Highlands, these beings could embody the dead, ancestors who refused to rest, caught halfway between stone and soul. Folklorists have long wondered if these tales sprung from the trauma of displacement and loss, the tangible grief of losing homeland or loved ones, transformed into figures made of cold rock, unyielding yet eternal. Like ancient therapy sessions carved in folklore, the stone people provided a framework to process grief, time, and change in a world where the seasons themselves felt alive and threatening. Yet beneath this behavior lay another truth. The stone people were liminal creatures, representing thresholds between worlds. In Iceland, sagas tell of people who turned to stone as punishment or salvation, frozen forever in moments of profound transformation. One famous story, recounted in the 13th century Eyjabygja saga, describes a group of trolls, close kin to these stone people, who were petrified in the sunlight as a curse, their forms becoming landscape features that remain to this day. These narratives are less about monsters and more about change, about the permanence of consequence, and the fragile boundary between human and non-human realms. This reveals something deeper about the stone people. They were a living metaphor for impermanence and endurance, embodying the paradox of nature's cycles. In their statuesque form, they remind us that even the most solid-seeming reality is subject to transformation, just as a stone erodes or cracks over centuries. Today, they might be replaced by legends of urban decay or ruin porn, images of abandoned buildings crumbling slowly like forgotten giants. But the stone people held a sacred stillness that modern ruins can rarely capture, a remembrance of times when the earth was alive in the stories we told. What these tales really reveal is how we humans have continuously tried to navigate our place in the natural order, transforming the land into stories that reflect our fears, hopes, and values. The stone people stand at the crossroads of this endeavor, merging geology with legend, physicality with spirit. They might have vanished from popular belief, but their echoes persist in modern culture's fascination with superheroes made of stone, granite tough but with hidden hearts. Think of the rock in comic books or the golems of Jewish folklore, animated protectors made of clay or stone, born from divine clay rather than mundane earth. The stories tell us something else too. They whisper of an ancient understanding that life and the inorganic are not so clearly divided, that the world pulses with a secret vitality, and to see a rock or cliff as simply stone is to miss the depth of its story. For the communities that believed in the stone people, every boulder could be a sentinel, every rock an immortal being waiting for the moment to come alive again. This belief shaped their relationship to place. They moved through landscapes with reverence, knowing that beneath their feet lay a tapestry woven with the breath of 1,000 forgotten lives. But there is more to this story. A story most don't remember but which is recorded in the few surviving songs and ballads, such as the Ballad of the Stone Maiden from the Scottish borders. It tells of a young woman cursed to wear a gown carved from the mountain's heart, able to walk by day, but turning to immovable stone by nightfall. If you find her in the morning mist, the ballad warns, do not speak, or she shall never return to flesh. The tale ends tragically as a bold young man, driven by love and curiosity, breaks this rule, causing her to vanish forever, turned permanently to stone on a lonely hillside. The ballad's haunting melody echoes the tension between human longing and the harsh, unyielding reality of the natural world. Imagine hearing this song by a crackling fire, the scent of peat smoke swirling with the night air, the voices rising and falling like the hills themselves. Such storytelling was a communal experience, a shared ritual binding people to one another and the land. These rituals were, in a way, nature's version of security cameras, preserving social bonds, and land ethics through mythic memory, ensuring that respect for the environment and ancient customs survived generations. But as those fires dwindled, replaced by electric light and the hum of machines, the stone people slipped further into shadow. Modern life speed and skepticism have rendered these figures relics, quaint stories for folklore enthusiasts rather than living parts of our cultural landscape. In cities, the stone becomes cold concrete, stripped of mystery or soul. In suburbs, the ancient groves where such beings might have roamed are logged or paved over. We have lost something precious, a worldview that embraced both the tangible and the magical, allowing the earth's voice to speak through stone and story. Now, as digital screens flood our senses and the world is mapped down to pixels, the vanishing of the stone people invites us to reflect on what we have gained and what we have sacrificed. Have we traded mystery for convenience, skepticism for certainty? The stone people remind us that there once was a time when the world still held secrets worth protecting, when even the coldest stone could pulse with life if only you dared to look. They ask us to reconsider what counts as real and to remember that beneath every stone, every boulder, lies an untold story waiting to be heard. So, where do we go from here? How do we reconnect with a vanished world? In the next part of this journey, we will explore the ancient rituals, legends, and forgotten truths that kept the stone people alive in the hearts of those who knew them, and what lessons they offer to us now in an age defined by concrete and glass. Because beneath every myth lies a truth, and beneath every stone, a story. In the veiled silence after the stirring tales of the stone people, the air grows still, dense with the weight of something ancient and unseen. Now let us delve deeper, beyond the cracked granite faces and shadowed myths, into the heart of a singular story that has lingered in the mists of the Scottish borders for centuries. A ballad that tells not just of stone and flesh, but of love, loss, and the irreversible grasp of fate. Imagine a night heavy with peat smoke, where the firelight flickers against weathered faces, and the ballad of the Stone Maiden is sung in low, trembling voices. It begins with a maiden named Elised, cursed by a jealous mountain spirit to wear a gown hewn from the mountain's very heart. By day, she walks with the villagers, her laughter like water trickling over rocks. But by night, as twilight bleeds into darkness, she crumbles into cold, unyielding stone. One evening, a young shepherd named Callum, drawn by tales and the haunting melody drifting through the glen, ventures to find her. After hours searching beneath the knotted oaks and standing stones, he finally sees her, a figure glowing faintly in the morning mist, delicate as crystal, yet heavy with the burden of stone. "Do not speak," an old woman's voice had warned him, "for the power that holds her is drawn from silence." But love, that oldest and most stubborn of magics, fills his heart. Unable to resist, Callum calls to her. The moment his words break the hush, a tremor runs through the valley, the warmth slips away, and Elised's form hardens irrevocably, turning to granite beneath the dawning sky. She is lost, permanently caught between worlds, a living statue standing sentinel over a secret mountain pass. This story is no mere tragedy. It is a window into how the stone people embody the fragile balance between human yearning and the unforgiving natural order. Folklorists like Catharine Briggs and Sir Walter Scott have chronicled such ballads, preserving them as cultural relics, but also as profound reflections of a worldview where the personal and the elemental were woven tightly together. In these tales, the stone people are not only guardians or envoys of the earth, but also tragic liminal beings, caught in transformation, forever symbolizing the cost of crossing boundaries, whether between life and death, stone and flesh, or love and loss. This should be no surprise, for the ancient landscape of Scotland itself is carved from stories of shape-shifting, frozen curses, and restless spirits. When life was perilous and communities small, myths like these acted as cautionary tales, weaving lessons into lore that tethered people back to respect for nature's hidden laws. But the stone people were more than just metaphors for personal or natural boundaries. They were ancient social regulators, much like medieval social workers, enforcing ethical behavior through the unspoken threat that disrespect could turn flesh to stone. In the mist-shrouded forests of the Scottish borders, countless tales warn that those who break promises or trespass on sacred land might be turned to stone as punishment. These weren't idle threats but a spiritual framework to encourage harmony with the land and community. Think of them as nature's version of security cameras, quietly watching, silently judging, and ensuring that fairness and reverence persisted across generations. To the people of the oldie world, every standing stone was not just a marker but a living witness, a reminder that the past and its voices were always close. As the world aged and industrial modernity took hold, these stories, and their lessons, began to fade, supplanted by steel rails and smoke rising from factories. The emergence of rationalism and science redefined our relationship with the natural world, reducing its mysteries to physics and geology, stripping the stones of their breath and meaning. In literature collections by the Brothers Grimm and other folklorists, We find echoes of these ancient beings in tales of golems or petrified trolls, but they are fragmented, like shards of a greater myth shattered by time. This fading is not accidental but symptomatic of a broader cultural shift. From a world where life was suffused with animism and mystery, to one where nature was seen as inert and human dominion unquestioned. Yet beneath this loss lies something much deeper. The stone people represent a primeval psychological need to connect with endurance and remembrance. In ancient Celtic cultures, where oral tradition was paramount, myths like those of the stone people served as emotional anchor points for processing trauma, displacement, loss of home, the death of loved ones. To imagine an ancestor frozen halfway between life and stone was a way to hold grief steady, to make the permanence of loss tangible and, paradoxically, bearable. Like ancient therapy sessions, these stories provided a symbolic space for healing, transforming sorrow into sacred monument. The living statue is a psychic container for memory, a bridge between human fragility and the timeless earth. This theme of endurance and transformation emerges strongly in Icelandic sagas as well, most famously in the Eyjabygja saga, where groups of trolls, sometimes inseparable from the stone people in folklore, are caught in sunlight's curse and turned to living rock. Far from straightforward monsters, they embody the consequences of crossing cosmic boundaries and the permanence of moral and spiritual actions. Here, stone becomes both punishment and preservation, an eternal reminder carved into the very landscape, the geologic memory of myth. While these stories tell of petrification and loss, they also hint at salvation, the possibility that transformation itself can be a form of survival beyond mortal limits. This reveals something deeper about the stone people. They are expressions of liminality, suspended between states, reminding us that change is the only constant, that even stone is subject to time's reshaping. The stories tell us something else that resonates through modern culture: the enduring fascination with characters who blur the line between humanity and stone. From the golems of Jewish folklore, divine clay brought to life, to modern superheroes like the Rock, made bulletproof and unstoppable, we see echoes of the stone people's contradictory nature. They embody strength and vulnerability, permanence and change, coldness and warmth. What these parallels suggest is that, even in an era dominated by screens and steel, our collective imagination still hungers for symbols of endurance and protection rooted deeply in the earth. The stone people, though vanished from active belief, persist as archetypes, figures representing our connection to something older and more elemental than ourselves. And so, we arrive at the profound truth beneath these ancient tales. The stone people symbolize a worldview now at risk of extinction. They remind us that the boundary between the living and the inert, the human and the natural, is more porous than we might believe. Every rock, every ancient mound is a repository of stories, grief, magic, and memory, waiting quietly to reawaken for those who still listen. For the communities who believed, walking through the forest was never a mindless act, but a pilgrimage through a landscape charged with presence and power. This is why, in the oldie world, to move carelessly was dangerous. The earth was alive with eyes and patience, and the stone people were its guardians. Today, cities swallow those landscapes, and concrete replaces moss-covered stones. Yet, if we listen closely, to folk songs, to the wind through ancient trees, to the silence in stone circles, we might yet hear echoes of the stone people's whispers. They invite us to pause, to remember the sacredness woven into the earth, and to reimagine our place not as conquerors but as participants in an ancient dance of transformation. These creatures remind us that we once lived closer to mystery, when the world still held secrets worth protecting and honoring. They ask us to reckon with what we carry forward, the stories we tell, the respect we preserve, and the bonds between human hearts and the land beneath our feet. So the final question returns: what can we learn from the vanishing of the stone people? Perhaps this: that in losing these myths, we lose a vital part of ourselves, our connection to endurance, memory, and reverence for the unseen. But the stories are not gone entirely. They live on in whispers, in stones, in the quiet pulse of old earth waiting to be heard again. To reclaim this precious heritage, we need only look beyond the surface, to see what stones might tell if we listen with care. Because beneath every stone lies a story, beneath every myth a truth waiting to awaken, and it is up to us to keep their memory alive. So next time you pass a moss-covered boulder or stand before a weathered monument, pause and imagine the stone people watching you, silent and still, yet brimming with ancient life. Remember that in honoring these vanished sentinels, you reconnect with the enduring mystery, that the world is not merely what we see, but what we feel, remember, and dare to believe. And in that remembering, we find a path back to wonder, to respect, and perhaps to rediscovery of stone people who never truly left us after all.